Our next reading for today's service comes from the Gospel of Matthew, part of chapter 9. While Jesus spoke these things to them, behold, a ruler came to him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." So Jesus arose and followed him, and so did his disciples. And suddenly a woman who had a flow of blood for 12 years came from behind and touched the hem of his garment. For she said to herself, "If only I may touch his garment, I shall be made well." But Jesus turned around, and when he saw her, he said, "Be of good cheer, daughter. Your faith has made you well." And the woman was made well from that hour. When Jesus came into the ruler's house and saw the flute players and the noisy crowd wailing, he said to them, "Make room, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they ridiculed him. But when the crowd was put outside, he went in and took the girl by the hand, and she arose. And the report of this went out into all that land. When Jesus departed from there, 2 blind men followed him, crying out and saying, "Son of David, have mercy on us." And when he had come into the house, the blind men came to him. And Jesus said to them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" And they said to him, "Yes, Lord." Then he touched their eyes, saying, "According to your faith, let it be to you." And their eyes were opened. And Jesus sternly warned them, saying, "See that no one knows it." But when they had departed, they spread the news about him in all that country. As they went out, behold, they brought to him a man, mute and demon-possessed. And when the demon was cast out, the mute spoke. And the multitudes marveled, saying, "It was never seen like this in Israel." But the Pharisees said, "He casts out demons by the ruler of the demons." Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were weary and scattered, like sheep having no shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." And our final reading today comes from the teachings of the new church, from the book Arcana Coelestia. When the Lord is present, then all things are set in order by his very presence. The Lord is order itself, and therefore where he is present, there is order. And where there is order, he is present. Amen. The description of the holy city is beautiful. And part of what makes it so beautiful is the feeling of restoration that it gives us. The feeling that things are being made right. As the holy city descends, we're told, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. The promise of the holy city is so much more than a grand and glorious idea. It hits much closer to the heart than that. It's a promise of healing, deep healing that ends pain and sorrow forever. Who on earth doesn't long for that? The reading makes it clear that this kind of healing is something that the Lord is offering us. So how do we receive it from him? The reading from Matthew gives us a wonderful picture of the Lord as a healer. In that reading, he just moves from one healing to the next. First, he goes to heal the ruler's dead daughter, and on the way, a woman with a flow of blood touches his garment and is made well. The people at the ruler's house laugh at the idea that he is going to heal the ruler's daughter, but all he has to do is take the girl by the hand, and she arises. Then when he leaves, 2 blind men come to him to be healed. And then after that, a mute and demon-possessed man is brought to him to be healed. And that passage ends with the words, "Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people." The impression we get is that healing emanates from the Lord wherever he goes, that health pours out from him like light pours from the sun, which is kind of what it said in that reading from Arcana Coelestia. It said that the Lord is order itself, and health is order. Health is the way things were meant to be. When the Lord is present, then all things are set in order by his very presence. The reading from Matthew makes it seem like the way that we get healing from the Lord is simply by finding him, simply by tracking him down. And then once we've found him, the healing is just something he does, and it's something kind of mysterious and magical. And of course, if that's all that there was to it, then we'd be out of luck, because he's not walking the earth in a body that we can see anymore. We can't bring our afflictions to him physically, which maybe seems unfair. Why was it just that handful of people who happened to be alive when the Lord was on earth, who got those miracles that we don't get? But the truth is that nothing the Lord does is actually limited by time or space. And the physical healing that he offers in these stories is perhaps the least important part of what these stories show us. The healings of physical afflictions are testaments to the Lord's power as a healer, and they're illustrations of his ability to heal us on a deeper level. What he really wants us to see and believe is that he's able to heal our souls. And in the teachings of the new church, we read, "By healing he shall heal" is symbolized in the internal sense to restore, because disease and sickness symbolize the infirmity of the internal person, infirmity that exists when he is sick in respect to his life, which is spiritual life. In everything that the Lord does, he looks to what is spiritual, because what's spiritual is eternal. He wants to give us health and happiness that cannot be taken away from us. And he does want us to have healthy bodies, but this body is going to die sometime. The health of this body matters for a little while, but the health of the spirit matters forever. And so the gospel stories about his ministry as a healer aren't really about the healing of physical maladies. That was a bonus. What the Lord really wants us to see is that he is able to make our spirits whole. And to understand that the healing that emanates from him is directed first and foremost towards our spirits makes it a little easier to see how his healing might work. But being healed spiritually can still seem like a mysterious and magical thing. And if we don't understand how spiritual healing works, then whether we receive it or not is going to seem like an arbitrary thing. In order to understand how we receive healing, it's helpful to have a clear understanding of what health or healing really is. There are two different ways we can define it. Healing is the removal of what's wrong. It's the removal of whatever injury or malady we're dealing with. And healing is also the restoration of the way we're meant to be. Being healthy simply means being the way we're supposed to be. And of course, those two definitions actually make one. Being healed means that what's afflicting us, what's wrong, is removed so that we can be restored to the way we're supposed to be. Something that's important to note is that the removal of what's wrong is the aspect of healing that we human beings can play an active role in. The other aspect, the restoration of health, just happens and we don't control it. So for example, we can wash dirt out of a cut and we can put a Band-Aid on it to keep it clean, but we can't make our skin knit back together. The body just does that. And we can take an antibiotic to kill the bacteria that are causing an infection, but that's not quite the same thing as healing ourselves. Killing the infection makes room for healing, but the restoration of health just happens. You could say that the body heals itself, or you could say that health flows into us. Either way, we don't control it. Spiritual healing works the same way. When it comes to removing bad stuff, we have an active role to play. When it comes to the restoration of health, our role is passive. And the removal of bad stuff involves the use of tools. When it comes to physical health, the things that are wrong with us aren't cured by just wishing that it were so. There are tools that we use. In the previous example, I mentioned water and Band-Aids and antibiotics. In general, those tools are called medicine. The tools for the removal of spiritual maladies are called truths. Wherever medicine is mentioned in the Word, it represents the truths that allow us to remove hurtful things from our spirits. Now, this idea isn't always something that we want to hear. When we're feeling unhappy and we want healing for our spirits, being told that we need to learn and apply the correct truth can feel cold or harsh or clinical. If we're feeling unhappy, what we want is love and support. But medicine is supposed to be clinical. And that doesn't mean that a precise and correct use of medicine can't be united with a loving and supportive attitude. Some medical professionals are dismissive or disinterested in their patients, but others are warm and compassionate, and that doesn't mean that they're worse at their jobs. We'd all choose the compassionate doctor if we could. But medicine, even medicine for our bodies, is ultimately about the truth. Medicine is concerned with what works and not necessarily with what we want. And so doctors sometimes have to tell people, your lifestyle is unhealthy. And doctors sometimes have to tell people, you need surgery, or you need chemotherapy. And those are not happy truths. But having the doctor lie to us wouldn't be a preferable alternative. In a similar vein, medicine has to be used correctly. Good intentions aren't enough all by themselves. And to be used correctly, medicine has to be studied and practiced. Truth may not be what we want, but we need it. Being able to identify what's harming us and then knowing what to do about it is how we get healed. And that's not a fun process, especially when the things that are hurting us are things that we're responsible for. But there's no substitute for the truth. The Lord's Word is like a textbook on spiritual medicine. It teaches us what things hurt our spirits. It teaches us the fundamental principles of spiritual health. Cease to do evil, learn to do good. And if we understand the Word, it shows us how to use spiritual medicine with precision. Every disease has its own remedy. So if we're inclined to be judgmental, the Word answers, "He who is without sin among you, let him throw the first stone." Or if we're anxious, the Word answers, "Consider the lilies. If God so clothes the grass of the field, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith?" And of course, we don't always understand the Word. And the ministers who teach and explain the Word, well, they can be wrong, just like doctors can be wrong. But the Lord is the most expert healer who has ever lived, and He's written a perfect textbook, one that speaks to all people, however wise or simple they may be. And if we go to the Word diligently, sincerely trying to learn what the Lord is trying to teach, then we will find truth that we can use. And we can rest assured that our teacher will never be wrong. I said before that there are two aspects of healing: the removal of what's wrong and the restoration of health. Truths are the tools with which spiritual maladies are removed. But what about that restoration? That's not something we bring about. We don't heal our bodies. And in fact, our bodies do their best healing while we're asleep. Healing wells up within us, and that's because healing is flowing into us constantly, flowing into us from the Lord. As we saw in that reading from Matthew, health emanates from Him wherever He goes, and He never leaves us. We read, God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. Then He who sat on the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. That is how He heals us, by making all things new. And not just once in a while. Every hour, every moment, He is making all things new. The heavenly doctrines teach that continuing in existence is a perpetual coming into existence. Again, continuing in existence is a perpetual coming into existence, which means that existing is a perpetual state of being created again and again and again. And here's another passage that helps to explain this idea. The angels say that there is but one fountain of life, and that a person's life is a stream therefrom, which, if it did not unceasingly come into existence from its fountain, would immediately flow away. That fountain of life is the Lord. His life is flowing into us moment by moment, creating us all over again. And His life is perfect health. Health means order. Health is just a word for the way that things are meant to be. And the Lord is order. And the Lord's presence brings order. In the Lord's presence, the created world falls into the order into which He created it. The things that make us unhappy and unhealthy are things that block or distort the life flowing into us. And the Lord's life has to adapt itself to those things. It has to find its way through the kinks in the barriers that we put up. But His life never stops flowing out to us. It shines on us no matter what it finds in us. And when those barriers are removed, then His life flows into the space that's created and order is restored. And nothing about this is magical or mysterious. It's not necessarily even dramatic or cathartic. Healing is simply the presence of the Lord that dawns when the curtain is drawn back. It's a sigh of peace because things are as they're meant to be, because the former things have passed away. Healing is the presence of the Lord, and the Lord is present wherever He is made welcome. Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and He will dwell with them, and they shall be His people. God Himself will be with them and be their God, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Amen.